The leaders of Turkey, Russia and Iran are meeting in Ankara today for talks centering on the last Islamist and rebel stronghold in Syria, Idlib. Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan fears a Syrian offensive there will send tens of thousands of new refugees toward his country. In response, he wants to set up what he is calling safe zones for refugees inside of Syria. He's also threatening to open the floodgates, as he put it, and allow refugees to start coming to Europe again.
Turkish troops fire warning shots and tear gas at the border with Syria. They're trying to prevent Syrian protesters from storming across the frontier. The demonstrators are demanding protection from an offensive by the Syrian government on the last rebel stronghold of Idlib.
This is a warning that if nothing is done to help us, then we are coming to Turkey and Europe.
This is Erdogan's fear, that the destruction and the death in Idlib will send tens of thousands more Syrian refugees towards his country, joining the nearly 4 million who've already fled the carnage. He says this will have dramatic consequences, not just for Turkey, but for Europe too.
We will be forced to open the gates. We will be forced to open the gates. If you're going to provide support, then provide support. If you're not, sorry.
Erdogan sees this area in northern Syria as one solution to any new refugee crisis. Turkish and American troops are already patrolling here ahead of the establishment of what's been called a safe zone for the resettlement of up to 1 million Syrian refugees. But Erdogan says the international community, and Europe in particular, are not offering enough support for the plan. He also accuses the EU of failing to honour its commitments in a landmark 2016 refugee deal with Turkey. The EU offered Ankara €6 billion to stop the flow of migrants into Europe in 2015, but Erdogan says he's received barely half of the money. Europe says it's willing to have a discussion with Erdogan, but Greece, which takes in most of the new arrivals, says he must first change his tone.
The migration issue is a European matter. It is not a bilateral issue. And Mr. Erdogan must understand that he cannot threaten Greece and Europe in an attempt to secure more resources to handle the refugee issue.
But with more migrants reaching Greek shores in August 2019 than at any other time in the last 3 years, Athens also knows that a solution needs to be found urgently.
Let's bring in Kirsten Hellberg now. She is an author and a Syria analyst. She was a correspondent there for 7 years. Welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us. We have the Syrian government forces really pushing hard in Idlib. We have, with the backing of support from Russia, essentially. How has that affected the situation at the Turkish border?
Well, there are 500,000 Syrians being stranded at this border. Some of them are still living up in the open, under trees with some plastic protections. So it's a very dire conditions for them, obviously. And we have seen them taking their hatred or their, frustration to the border gates with the protests that we have just seen. They are demanding that you either protect us in Idlib or we want to go to Turkey and migrate further on to Europe. That's their demand. The people inside Idlib feel betrayed, especially by President Erdogan, who has put up 12 observation posts inside Idlib. But he cannot even protect his own observation posts, obviously, and he cannot stop the Russian air raids, and he cannot stop, obviously, the Syrian regime from advancing.
And the big question is, where do these people now go? Is there anywhere within Syria for them to go, realistically?
Actually not. I mean, half of them have already been displaced from different areas that have been retaken by the Syrian regime, so it's not an option for them to stay there to wait for President Assad to take this area. You have other Turkish protectorates north of Aleppo. You have Afrin, but these are small pockets that cannot really allocate that number of people. So this is why Mr. Erdogan wants to create this zone east of the Euphrates. And this is very important because it's a Kurdish-controlled area. And this would change, obviously, the demographic of the region. I mean, to resettle 1 million Arab Syrians that are now inside Turkey would really create a lot of social rifts, and it would make any kind of social reconciliation very difficult.
And, just in terms of sheer numbers, we're talking about 3.5 million Syrians who have already fled to neighboring Turkey.
Exactly.
Our correspondent, Yulia Han, is actually based in Turkey. She was just speaking with people on the streets, how they were assessing the situation and the presence of refugees there. Let's have a listen to what she had to say and then get your...
Turkey can't host more refugees from Syria. We've reached our limit.
Our young Turkish people are dying while fighting in Syria. But what are young Syrians doing? They just sit around here and smoke shisha. Is this fair and right?
We have to take care of the refugees. They're Muslims like us. It's our responsibility. They've lost their homes, their savings and honor. We have to help.
In Turkey, unemployment is a big problem. A lot of young people are unemployed. Even university graduates can't find jobs. We should take care of our own citizens first, then we can look after the others.
I now see signs in Arabic everywhere. I think we've started to lose our national identity. Very sad.
So some mixed responses there, but what you do hear among some is, a sense of fear, especially a sense of fear that more refugees might be coming and what that will do to the society, how it will impact. What do you make about, the potential for addressing some of those fears?
I think the scenario that we are going to see inside Idlib is the following. I think that Vladimir Putin, the Russian president, will come up with kind of a compromise saying that, okay, President Assad, the Syrian president, really needs to take control of two important highways inside Idlib, which is the M5 highway connecting Aleppo with the capital Damascus and the M4 highway connecting Aleppo in the north with the coastal region with Latakia there. So this is very important for Bashar al-Assad. He will not stop his offensive until he reaches this goal. And this will push the people further north. We could maybe foresee a kind of safe zone, or from the perspective of the Syrians, there would be an open-air prison, to name it very strongly, to host all these people there. Because this region, north of these two highways, is not that important for President Assad. Nobody wants to take these people in, neither Europe, nor Turkey, nor anybody else. They're afraid of the tens of thousands of fighters being there as well. So this would not be a stable situation, and it would be a humanitarian catastrophe if the international community does not take up its responsibility, at least for this small pocket that probably most of the inhabitants of Idlib would end up in.
Some major implications in terms of what is happening on the ground right now in Syria. Kirsten Hellberg, author and Syria analyst, putting it into context for us. Thank you.
Pleasure.